What's going on, everybody? Glad that you are here. I just straight up forgot that I still had my mask on, so give me a bit. Glad that y'all guys are here. Like Libin said, my name is Sly. I promise you I'm not just like Libin, even though we're wearing almost the same outfit and you just did this to him, right? So I'm excited and pumped that y'all guys are here with us tonight. Like, I'm excited for multiple reasons. Like, one, I'm excited because like when I first began kind of teaching the Bible and things like that, man, I would always look at this place and this room. It's like, man, it'd be cool if I could teach there one day. And I actually am tonight, which I think for me is pretty awesome that, man, I could actually do something like this here on a Tuesday night. I also think it's also pretty cool that I get to be here and speak to y'all guys. Like, you have no idea how much I prayed and longed for a day. Like Libin said, I was a college pastor here forever, and now recently I'm the college and young adults, and I get to be involved with the collective, and I absolutely love that I can get a chance to make an impact in young adults' lives. And I'm also excited that we are actually doing this series called Lost in the World. It came through like an idea that I had. It came listening through a podcast, and the podcast essentially was breaking down My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, right? Which is Kanye West's, like, in my opinion, best album. And it was talking about in this song, it's talking about right after the whole entire Taylor Swift thing, that he felt really lost, confused, what his next step should be, where he should go, what he should do next. And it was just a very interesting time for this dude, that he felt lost. And that through that process, I began to kind of question, how many young adults feel lost, feel the same way? Obviously, you're not snatching the microphone from Taylor Swift, right? But you still kind of feel lost and confused, where should I go next? What should I do? Think about it. Some of your older people here within tonight and within the collective, you experienced 2 recessions. That's nuts. On top of that, you've experienced a pandemic. It feels like there's civil wars about to happen within our country. You're in a very unique time that honestly you may feel lost. Now, if I could be honest, I've never really been lost. I don't hike, I don't camp. I don't do that, right? You can call me a punk sucker, you can call me whatever you want, right? The reality is I'm just bougie, right? I don't like to do that. Start walking, mosquitoes bite me, nah, I'm going back to the car with some AC, right? That's just me. But I have been lost a couple of times. One time I was little, I was 4. I got lost at a grocery store called Budget Chopper. And I was lost at Budget Chopper. And I remember losing my mom wherever she was. And I remember feeling alone, abandoned, scared, my stomach was doing all sorts of stuff. And I remember going to this lady, asking for help. And I said, hey, I lost my mom. And she goes, sweetie, and she had the audacity to ask me this. She goes, sweetie, what's your mom's name? And I'm like, yo, I told you, it's mom. Help me find mom. Other times, I come from the days before GPS, right? So I would drive and get lost within Houston so that fight or flight kicks in, but the same kind of feelings begin to enter in. You begin to feel alone. You begin to feel scared. Anxiety begins to kind of go up. You begin to not even make right decisions. I began to say, okay, well, I don't have any interesting stories about getting lost, so let me look at people that actually do interesting stuff and see what it's like to get lost. And I started reading hiker stories and watching interviews. And you know what? I began to see over and over and over and over again the same thing. The moment they got lost, they felt alone. They were scared. Because they were alone, they began to make some probably decisions that they normally would not make if they were with a group of people. They began to act sometimes foolishly. They would end up getting hurt. And it took somebody from the outside to come in and say, yo, I hear you're lost. Let's get you back to your family. Let's get you back with some people. Let's get you back to the place that you need to be. And maybe that's where you're at tonight. You feel lost. You feel isolated, you feel abandoned. And whether you saw something come across on Instagram, a friend invited you, you're waiting at a table and someone gave you a little round card, you decided to come and check us out for some weird reason. It happens. There was a young man who was once part of our ministry. He felt lost. He was clubbing, partying, doing drugs, doing all that kind of stuff, was literally lost. So much so that he didn't like that. He didn't like that feeling of alone and abandonment. He began to Google and eventually ended up here. And maybe that's you, maybe that's your story. And I just want to let you know that you're at the right place. You're the best place that you can be. You're at a place where, like we were singing earlier, man, God's here, he's present, where you don't have to feel alone in the midst of that. But on top of that, that's how Jesus describes himself. In John chapter 14, verse 6, Jesus says, I am the way. He describes himself as a way, as the way, the only way for you to find yourself. Actually, early Christians, you can see in the book of Acts, the way they were described as the way. They are the way. They're the people of the way. You can even go back to like the famous hymn, I was once lost and now I'm found. Amazing grace. Like if you feel lost, you're at the perfect place. And we know that this is true. Statistically, an insurance company decided to do a statistic regarding people and feeling alone and friendships and things like that. And they come to find out that 1 out of 5 people feel alone. So it would be about like anywhere from like 30 of y'all, 20 to 30 of y'all that are here in this place. Even though you're surrounded by people, you have people all around your life, you still feel alone. You feel alone. And so how do we get out of this? How do we break out of this kind of alone feeling? Well, that's what we want to tackle tonight. At least that's what I want to tackle. Yes, Jesus is here. He is present. But on top of that, he's giving the world that's alone, that feels abandoned, that feels isolated, a solution, which is people. To be more specific, to find your way, you need to surrender your individualism and submit to God's will and come alongside a family. And to do this, I just want to talk about 3 points. 3 points, and we'll be on our way to eating some brownies. And ultimately, it's this, that you need people. You need people in your life. Not only do you need people that love Jesus in your life. And then lastly, you need people that love you. People that love you. And to do this, we're gonna look at the book of Acts chapter 3, book of Hebrews, book of Hebrews chapter 3, and we're gonna look at verses 12 through 13. Hebrews chapter 3, verses 12 and 13. To give you a little background of the book of Hebrews written, we don't know who the author is, but we know who it's written to. It's written to a group of people that are beginning to decide, do we continue in Christianity? Do we continue to follow Jesus? Do we continue to make Jesus our all in all? Or do we abandon this faith and go pursue the faith that our fathers left? Do we go and pursue Judaism? And the author is begging them, like, don't go. It's not worth it. Like, you don't want to chase after anything else other than Jesus. And he begins to build these arguments that, listen, Jesus is greater than all these different things that you can imagine. And he begins to give them some warnings. And here and in chapter 3, he begins to tell them, hey, listen, Jesus is greater than Moses. It'd be like him writing to us saying, hey, listen, Jesus is greater than anyone or anything that's taught you morals, what's good and what's bad in this world. Why? Because Jesus essentially made and created morals for us to live by and operate on. Which then leads us right here to verse 12. He says this, take care, brothers, lest there be in any of you an evil, unbelieving heart, leading you to fall away from the living God. Watch that. He says, take care, brothers. Then he talks about lest there be in any of you. So he's talking to a group, and even that you right there, right? It's you for what we read here in our Bibles. But if you are Texan, it's that word y'all. I mean, I use that word all the time, y'all. The Southern drawl. He's talking about y'all. You, all, you guys, whatever you want to throw in, this is what he's talking. He's talking to a group of people, to a collective, no pun intended, right? He's talking to a group of people, letting them know, hey, it's about y'all now. It's about you. He even continues that. He actually is continuing that from verse 1 of this same chapter. He says, therefore, holy brothers and sisters, you who share in the heavenly calling, consider Jesus the apostle and high priest of your confession. He's letting them know, like, listen, it's not about you anymore, but it's about a people. And this is big for us in this day and age because we live in America, which is great. I believe it's the best country in the whole entire world. But there's a couple things about our culture that we need to begin to change and not let creep into the church. And one of these things is that America is highly individualistic. Highly individualistic. We have this kind of do-it-yourself attitude. Pull yourself up from your bootstraps like you got this, you can do this, and it's all about you, and you. Like we have on our phones and we have apps that everything is dictated for us, algorithms, everything that continues to say, hey, you're the most important person in the whole entire world. It's all about you. And so we tend to operate and live and do that. But that attitude does not equate with all of Christianity. You begin to read and study, and the more and more and more that you read, it's about a group. Jesus cares about a group. He cares about people, and it's always been that way. He doesn't like people to operate and go and live life alone. In the very beginning, he makes Adam, and then he begins to say, hey, listen, it's not good for this brother to be alone. Let's make somebody for him. It's not good for us to be alone. Still to this day, the greatest punishment you can ever give a person is solitary confinement, the box. It's horrendous and messes people up in the brain. And it's beginning to tear, this individualistic mentality in our society is beginning to tear us apart. It's beginning to mess up the things and the fabrics of our society. There's a famous book by Robert Putnam written, and it started from 1995. He began to kind of write it then and it became a book in 2000. I had to read it in college, and by read it, I mean Spark Notes, and by Spark Notes, I mean read a couple of blogs on the internet about it, right? But this is what this guy began to talk about. He began to talk about social capitalism. Now, I'm not talking about ideology, beliefs, or anything like that, political stuff. Get that stuff out of the way. But it's just like capitalism, right? Money allows you to buy certain things. Right, the more money you have, the more resources you have to get certain things, better healthcare, right, better car, more food, so on and so forth. But in social capitalism, the more friends you have, the better resources you have available to you. So if you have a whole mess of friends, right, and you have your car breaks down, hey, you more than likely have a friend who can fix a car. Right? If you have no fashion sense like myself, right? You got some friends like, yo, what do y'all think about this? Like, does this look good? Good. I ain't looking like an old dad, right? Okay, good. Awesome. Just trying to make sure that this is okay. You have people there to be able to help you. What he began to notice in 1995, some of y'all like weren't even born yet. Man, that makes me feel old. He began to notice that people were no longer caring about that. People were actually bowling alone. Picket fences started going up in houses. People quit hanging out with each other as like they used to, right? People started trading in the farmers markets for supermarkets. And while, yes, social media has helped some, there's still that disconnect that it's created, right? It's created some barriers in some ways. And if anything, we put a fake version of ourselves, not the true version of ourselves. And all it's done, it's began to create some cracks in our society. Individualism is not good. It's not good for a society, and it's also not good for us, and it's not good because why God never intended it to be that way. Ultimately, it's not about you, it's not about me, but it's about the we. And that's what God does. God comes in and he saves in clusters. God saves people. God cares about people, plural. Like you don't go to a store and just buy one grape. Right? If you do, people are like, yo, man, this brother's suffering. Like, yo, just go. Let's not pretend this was happening, right? Like, just go on by your day, right? Some of y'all are just savages and eat them with COVID and all. You're just straight up eating the grapes still to this day out of the bag. No, you buy them all together. That's what Jesus does. He purchases people. He cares about people. So what we're trying to say and what we're trying to communicate is that, listen, there's an invitation extended to you, to every single one of you, that if you're a believer, you are now part of a family. And if you're not a Christian, what this is an invitation to come and do life with us. That we would love for you to come and be a part of what we're doing. And listen, like any other family, there is some dysfunction, right? You got some siblings that ain't talking to each other, right? You got some siblings that are willing to fight, right? Like you notice some dysfunction, but that's completely okay. But we care for each other. We begin to support each other. We begin to live for each other. And that's what a family does. That we need to begin to erase some of this toxic mentality that we've allowed to creep into the church. This whole entire idea of you do you, honey boo boo. Right? Like this whole entire, man, you got to take care of yourself first. Only care for me. It's funny that people that write those books are making tons of dollars off of some people that's completely messing up the church. Because it's not about that. Past generations, that was a value that they cared for. It's caring for the other people. They would go to war for the countrymen. They would go to war for their neighbors. That's what Libin was talking about the first week of this series. You're like, when God begins to save you, right, he also saves you for others, to use you, to impact other people's lives. In a highly individualistic society, we miss the beauty of community. And so this is what this passage is beginning to open our eyes, that we need people. That's how God created us to operate. And listen, can I just be real with you? I know quarantine has been hard, or social distancing, or isolation, or lockdown, or whatever you want to call it, has been hard. Has been really difficult, and I think a lot of us have developed some really bad habits because of that. I remember in Zoom calls, like with the college ministry and some of the different groups, and I remember preaching sometimes like we would do this like on Instagram, it was just college ministry. I remember saying this over and over again, and I still believe it's true that some of the people that were once with us in church, that we did life with, will no longer come back, will no longer be together the moment this is all over. And I still believe that. I hope that doesn't happen to you. I hope you're here today and realize, listen, you need people. Stop living life alone. But it's not only that. It's not only about the quantity of friends or people that you have around you. It's also about the quality of people that you have around you. And the people that you need around you are people that love Jesus. He'll continue on and say, unbelieving heart, leading you to fall away from the living God. This idea of living God communicates the gospel message. It communicates that Jesus Christ came and lived the life that we could not live, lived that perfect life because he was God. He was able to do that, and he died on a cross. And he was buried in the grave. But unlike any other famous religious leader, if you go visit their graves, they're still in the grave. But not Jesus, man. You go to Israel, right? The tomb is empty. Why? Because he resurrected from the dead. We serve and live a living God. And what he's beginning to kind of communicate, that there's a path we're supposed to be on, a path that we're supposed to be chasing. And he's saying, hey, don't move away from that path. Don't move away from God. That your relationship with Jesus is the most important relationship that you can have. I can't tell you the times that I'm sharing on a college campus, or I'm at a restaurant or a coffee shop. Literally last Tuesday after the collective was at a restaurant and had a conversation with a young man. And it goes down the same way. When they're far away from God, they know that deep down inside, it's the most important relationship they should have. They feel it. They feel guilt. They feel shame as they're talking to me. And I'm trying to comfort them, saying, like, listen, don't feel that. But let's talk about that. Because they know that they're needing to be close to God, but they're far away. It's the most important relationship you should have. Back in the day, there was these group of pastors and preachers that kind of all got together and said, hey, listen, we need to educate our people about God and theology and all these great things. And so they developed a thing called a catechism, which was questions and answers. In the Westminster Catechism, question number 1, they asked this question: what is the chief end of man? And they respond, man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. That's what we're about. That's what your goal is. That's what Libin talked about our very first week here. And what you need is people around you that understand that that's their chief end, that's their end goal, that's the place that they're pursuing. You need people in your life that understand that and get that, and are willing to walk with you. In this passage, in chapter 3, he gives them a warning, and the warning that he gives them is the people of Israel. And if you know anything about the story of Exodus, is the people get out of Egypt, they're free. But they begin to wander the desert. A group of people get essentially lost in the desert. Why? Because you had one person saying, hey, this is the way we should go. And you had others saying, nah, we ain't going that way. Others that outright rebelled, people that complained. And what began to happen is that other people say, nah, I'm gonna follow this other dude. I'm not following Moses. I'm not following the guy who parted the sea, which is like beyond me. And they say, no, we're gonna go this route instead. And what ended up happening? God displayed his wrath on them. And that's ultimately the way I see it, removing his blessing and saying, okay, if this is what you want, go ahead. I'm not involved in this. And he's essentially telling them, he's like, hey, don't be like the people in Israel that wandered around aimlessly until they all died and a Jew generation came up and said, no, that's the path we're going on. That's the path. That Moses guy, no, listen, he's talking to God. This is the guy that we need to go. We can hear from God when we're close to this Moses guy. No, this is the path. This is the direction that we need to go. What you need is people that know where they're going. Because like, listen, the last thing you want to do is get lost with people that don't know where they're going. One of the few times I did get lost, I got lost in San Antonio. I got lost in San Antonio with my brother and some of our friends. My brother was older, he could drive. I was 12. And we were at a conference. I don't remember much of the conference, other than it was in the Alamo Dome. And that the San Antonio Spurs were on the verge of winning their first championship. And so we leave the conference and we're in our car and we're beginning to drive. And as we're driving, we're seeing like on the screens and projectors and things like that in people's neighborhoods, like everybody had the game on. And it's winding down. And the belief was, they were even saying in the conference and everything, that the belief was that the San Antonio Spurs were the superior team. They were going to come back and win it at home. Have a big old party in San Antonio at the Riverwalk, right? But instead, they won it in New York. So as we're pulling around and getting to downtown, it's at gridlock. And so we're following the car that's getting us to the hotel, but instead of paying attention to see where the car is going, man, we're celebrating, man. We're doing high fives with people, right? Where there's a guy wearing like a New York shirt. He was a homeless guy, but we didn't care. We were making fun of him like everybody was. And it was just this kind of energy and excitement, and we were all hyped up with everybody else. Then before we know it, we looked up and he was like, yo, where's the car that we're following? Do you know where it's at? And then my brother had like the bright idea to listen to the 12-year-old. I'm like, oh, I think we took a left. When in reality, they took a right. And that led us to be lost in San Antonio for 4 hours. We didn't get to the hotel until 2 a.m. in the morning. We were hungry. We were angry. We were tired, we were exhausted, like all those kind of adjectives that you want to add, like you just add them. We were just not in good moods. Yeah, we were lost and we were lost together, but didn't make it any better. If anything, we just confused each other all the more. Turn left here, turn right here, turn left, and it just made matters worse. What you need is people that say, hey, this is the way that we're going, like a map. Right? Hopefully a map will come up. Maybe not. That's all right. But you know people where you know where you're going. And listen, knowing where you're going helps. And if you can tag along with the group of people that know exactly where they're going, it makes things a whole lot easier for you. You jump on board with them. And they begin to communicate what's greater. This is why we do the collective. It's not to shove religion down your throat. It's not to communicate like, hey, this way is superior. No, we just want you to come and do life with us as we continue to chase God. And as you begin to come and do life with us, you begin to see a change in your life. You begin to see God work in you because you begin to realize you can't do this God thing alone. It wasn't designed for you to be alone. So if you're feeling isolated, if you're feeling alone, if you're feeling abandoned, get next to the people of God. Follow them, see where they're going. Get into a community, get into a group of believers. Because listen, I'm telling you, something may stick with you. But it's not only that, you also need people that come in and love you. That just point number 3, that you need people that love you. This is what verse 13 says. But exhort one another every day, as long as it's called today, that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. The word exhort, not many of us use that word this day and age, but exhort simply means this: strongly encourage or urge someone to do something. What we need is not only people around us, not only people that are following Jesus, but we also need people that love us, that are willing to exhort us, to challenge us, to push us. Because here's the thing, this thing doesn't work by osmosis, right? It's not like going to a Mexican restaurant, eating some fajitas, some enchiladas, and all of a sudden you walk out and you're like, yo, man, I smell like Mexican food. It don't work like that. You need to be with some people that are warning you and showing you that, hey, sin is dangerous, because sin is dangerous. The enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. Like, there's nothing good about sin. And at one moment, at sometimes it may look cute, it may look wonderful. It's like people with baby tigers, right? Baby tiger looks cute and awesome and wonderful. Watching Tiger King saying, oh, that's sweet. And then all of a sudden you see that straight up by Tiger King's leg. You're like, no, right? Like, I don't want to mess with that. Why? Because it's an apex predator. All it wants to do is kill. That's what it was on this earth to do, to kill. And that's what sin is. It's gonna kill. And at moments we think that's okay, that we can manage it, that we can hold it all together. But the reality is we cannot do that. This is what the purpose of this letter is. The whole entire book of Hebrews, it's warning you, saying, listen, the path that you're on is gonna kill you. It's going to destroy you. Don't go that way. It's not worth it. That there's a better path, the path of Jesus, and it's greater. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's easier, but it's greater. And so we have to understand that faithfulness flows from a clear and healthy view of Jesus. But it doesn't stop there. It also helps. Faithfulness also flows from an encouraging community. That if you're around Jesus, you begin to hang around the people of Jesus. They begin to encourage you, challenge you, push you. Now, at this point, I know people begin to quickly think and say, okay, Sly, that's great and all, but man, if I can just do life with people and do life with people that love me, do I really need the second point? Do I really need people that love Jesus? And I would say, yeah, like that's what we've been communicating for this whole entire purpose of Lost in the World. Like, listen, you need Jesus. This is what's all about. Jesus is our number one goal in life. You need him. But secondly, you can never fully love people or fully be loved by people unless their first love is Jesus. Everybody's love by their human nature has a limit. It has a cap. It's like you with the pitcher and then the water, and then you just pour out. Eventually that pitcher will run dry, and that's it. No more water to give. But if you had a cup and a pitcher and a faucet, which that's how Jesus describes himself, like the well of living water. Man, this love never runs dry. It keeps going and going and going. What ends up happening is when you get around some people that ultimately love by their own power, their own ability, eventually it turns into selfish motives. Again, kind of quoting Kanye again, right? Like Real Friends, he has a whole entire song dedicated to that. Now that he's famous, he just has a lot of people that just want to use him. Some of y'all have been that. One of the greatest ways I've seen this in ministry is like guys that begin to talk to girls, right? And they begin to become friends and they're cool and all that. And the moment the guy asks the girl out and the girl rejects him, they're like, okay, cool, we're no longer friends anymore. It's like, it's weird, it's childish. But many times we operate in this world exactly like that. We operate under that same mentality. How can I use the next person? And not that it never happens within the Christian circles, but you need friends that love you enough to tell you the truth, that see Jesus and say, yo, this is the path that we're going on. This is the path that we're striving for. This is the direction we're moving to. Come on, come with us. Doesn't communicate perfection, but it communicates progress. This is where we want to go. And that requires you to kill that individualism, that I can do this on my own, or my life is private, no one can come in. Tim Keller, famous pastor out of New York, he says this: everyone says they want community and friendship, but mention accountability or commitment to people and they run the other way. Yeah. We don't want to be exposed. We don't want to be around people to fully see us for who we really are. But when we begin to do that, it's one of the most rewarding things ever. That when you have people that continue to communicate to you that Jesus is greater, like on the map, like Jesus is the goal on the map. This is where we're going. Man, so much life comes from that. And we gotta understand that this is a difficult path to go on. Jesus himself says, hey, listen, to get to me, man, it's a narrow pathway. The other direction to go, the opposite of me, is like I-10, both lanes go in one direction. But to me, to get to me, it's a narrow pathway. And what you need is some people behind you, in front of you saying, hey, watch your step. If you're not careful here, you're gonna slip. You're gonna fall off the cliff, and it's not gonna be good for you. You need people in your life that encourage you, that love you, that protect you, that correct every single step of the way. Which I hope this leads to many of us saying, okay, Sly, I'm tired of the isolation. I'm tired of being alone. I understand that Jesus is with me, and he's giving me people, but like, how do I begin to find people? Man, this place is big, and it's like awkward just to walk up to random strangers. And what I would challenge you is listen. For some of y'all gotta kind of treat this for a little bit like a game of pickup basketball. Like when you play basketball, right? You go to the gym or you go to like a park or something like that. You see people that are already hooping, right? You just grab your ball and you call your next, which means like, hey, I'm next. Let me develop a team out of the people that lose. And so you're watching both sides as you're kind of dribbling the ball, saying, okay, let me see. Okay, listen, that dude doesn't got a shot. Nah, I ain't picking him, right? Oh, that guy's too short. Nah, I ain't got that dude, right? I got to get that tall guy, right? And you begin to kind of notice who can play and who can't play. What you need to be doing for a while is, man, kind of hanging out with some people here and begin to say, man, what are some areas in my life that are weak, that I'm incomplete in, that maybe some people around me, man, can help me, encourage me. Yo, this brother loves to pray. Yo, I need to gather around this guy so I can begin to pray. Yo, this person is always quoting scripture. What can I do to be like that? Let me get around this guy. And you begin to circle yourself around some people that continue to encourage you, to exhort you, to begin to look more and more like Jesus. Or to say like how Jackie Hill Perry, she's a great poet, spoken word, Christian artist. She puts it like this. She says, get friends that make sin look bad, God look good, grace look tangible, and the gospel look true. That's what you need in your life. People that can do those type of things. And so my encouragement is to find a community that becomes a family. Find a community that pushes you to love Jesus, that encourages you, that has Jesus as its main goal. And they're not okay with you just being okay, but they desire to pull you along and say, come on, let's go. And listen, you need this for all aspects of your life. If you're at a place saying, nah, Sly, I think I'm good. Yo, can I just challenge you? You really need it. So recently, man, in our household, man, we've had a lot of sadness. We miscarried our third child. Man, it was sad. Like it completely wrecked me. Wrecked my wife, it wrecked us as a whole. My daughter, like it just shook us as a whole. Man, and if you don't know, like I wear a hat for a reason. I got like these giant like boils, scabs, stuff like that in the back of my head right here that I'm currently seeing a dermatologist for, taking some medication, but it's kind of gross sometimes. And through all this, man, we've had some kind of like health issues and all these different things begin to happen. And if I can be 100% real with you, yo, like I wake up some days like, man, like, is this really worth it? Should I continue this God thing? Like God, I've forsaken money, I've forsaken popularity, like I've forsaken all these different things. And for what? To lose my kid? To be in pain all the time? To see my wife and all these health issues? Like God, come on, I didn't sign up for this. But then I get a text message. Yo, man, I'm praying for you. Then I have some people come around us literally for like a week and a half. We didn't have to worry about any meals, not breakfast, not lunch, not dinner. And we had people come around us and love us. We had people come and just do our dishes. Like, I literally want to mention names, but I don't want to mention names because I don't want to leave anybody out. We had people just come around us and love us. People come around me and love me and say, Sly, like, yo, bro, like, that's the enemy. He's trying to fool you. He's trying to lead you to death. Let me exhort you. Let me challenge you. This is not the path you want to go on, man, but go and follow Jesus. It's my community, man. Help me kind of see through the fog to see the light. To say, okay, wait a minute, I fell off, but let me get back on that narrow path and let me continue to pursue my Lord, my Savior, who gave everything up for me. That's what I desire for y'all. You need that. If you're feeling isolated and alone, you need that. We're not meant to do this alone. So let me give you some real practical application for the way that you begin to do this. Right as you walk out, right there, the next step tent, we literally have cards that give you a group, and we have different groups for different age groups. We have one for college. We have one for young professionals, which is like 23 to 27, and then 20 plus, which is 28 to 30 somethings. Get into a group because you need it. You need to be around people that love Jesus, that study the Word of God, but ultimately will come around you and love you. We also have things like Friendsgiving, where we're gonna hang out and just do life together. And we have information for that. We have 2 of them, one for college and one for everybody else. But I'd love for you to come and check one of those out, that you can begin to know people. We all have that great need to be known and accepted. Put yourself in places where you can be known and accepted. And even after this, man, I know for some of us, we're tired. We've had a long day. We just want to get on our car and go home, kick off our shoes, watch some Netflix. But instead, my challenge to you is don't. Come, have a brownie, have some milk, meet somebody, and begin this process of exhorting one another, of challenging one another, getting to know one another. Be challenged, be pushed. Don't run away from that, but lean in, because that's God's grace for you, to protect you, to have you avoid sin and see the great King who is sitting on his throne. Let's pray. God, I thank you so much, God, for the people here. Tonight, Lord, I pray that you begin to work in the lives of so many young adults. As everything around them has been dictated to tell them that's all about them, that they're the center of the universe. God, may they open their eyes and realize that you're the center of our universe. And that we need people, we need to do life with people. Not only people that love Jesus, but people that love us. And they love you so much that they're willing to be completely honest and truthful with us, to point us to you. God, I pray that people respond, people move. And God, we get some people to begin to exhort one another and challenge one another until we can see you face to face. God, we love you and we thank you, and all these things we ask. In the name of Jesus Christ, we do pray. Amen.